evening. I'm Teresa Skubik, and this is Forum Daily for Thursday, December 12th. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israeli forces will remain in a Syrian buffer zone until a new force on the other side of the border can guarantee security. After the overthrow of Syrian President Bashar Assad, Israeli forces pushed into a buffer zone that had been established after the 1973 Mideast War. The military says it has seized additional strategic points nearby. Mr. Netanyahu's office said in a statement on Thursday that Assad's overthrow by jihadi rebels created a vacuum on the border. The Israeli military says that it struck Hamas militants in 2 locations in the southern Gaza Strip who plan to hijack aid convoys. Palestinian health officials had earlier said that the 2 strikes killed 15 men who were part of local committees established to secure aid deliveries. The committees have been organized in cooperation with the Hamas-run Interior Ministry in Gaza. A spokesperson for Israel's prime minister provided more detail on the strikes this morning.
Overnight, Israel received intelligence of Hamas terrorists wanting to hijack aid. The IDF conducted precise strikes on armed terrorists, Hamas terrorists, gathered at 2 different points inside southern Gaza. These were terrorists operating in the humanitarian corridor. Now, our strike ensured the safe delivery of this aid to Gazans. All the terrorists were eliminated, and they were all Hamas. Our intelligence has showed that they plan to violently hijack the aid trucks and transfer them to Hamas. Why? To support their terror and cause hardship to Gazans. Where there is hunger, it is hunger orchestrated by Hamas, because of Hamas hijacking aid.
The outgoing Biden administration has announced it is raising tariffs on solar wafers, polysilicon, and some tungsten products from China. The U.S. says the move aims to protect America's clean energy businesses. The tariffs on affected imports will rise to 50%, and duties on certain tungsten products will increase to 25% starting January 1st. Beijing responded by banning exports to the U.S. of critical minerals needed to make computer chips. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Canada's premiers met virtually last night to discuss Donald Trump's threat to impose 25% tariffs on Canadian imports. Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland said that the premiers proactively identified critical minerals and other Canadian goods the U.S. relies on.
Some premiers proactively identified products that their provinces produce and export to the United States and which the U.S. relies on, and which should be considered as part of the Canadian response. This included some critical minerals and metals.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford says both federal and provincial governments are coming up with new suggestions on how Canada should respond to Mr. Trump's threats, going as far as suggesting that Canada cut off America's energy pipeline.
Chrystia Freeland's going to put a list together. We're going to put our list together, and I'm sure the other provinces will as well. But we will go to the full extent, depending how far this goes. We will go to the extent of cutting off their energy, going down to Michigan, going down to New York State, and over to Wisconsin. I don't want this to happen, but my number one job is to protect Ontario, Ontarians and Canadians as a whole, since we're the largest province.
And prior to the meeting, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh told the press that Mr. Trump is a bully, and he proposed retaliatory tariffs on American goods.
What we need to do is acknowledge that Trump is a bully. Bullies look for weakness. That's why he's trolling us. So we need to send a message of strength. We need to have a real war room ready to go, fighting for Canadian jobs with unions at the table. We need to put in place and get ready to put in place retaliatory tariffs. We have to make it clear, if Trump picks this fight, it's going to hurt both of us, and it's not a fight that he wants. We have to show strength, that we're willing to do whatever it takes to protect Canadian jobs. We have to also make sure it's very clear that tariffs on Canada don't just hurt Canadians, it's going to hurt Americans. We need to make that message very clear, make sure the pain is felt, and so he knows this is not the direction he wants to go.
All right, stay with us. Up next, Donald Trump returns to New York City to ring the bell at the New York Stock Exchange and to be honored as Time Magazine's Person of the Year. And Elon Musk has called Canada's Prime Minister insufferable in response to his comments on Kamala Harris's U.S. election defeat. After that, we'll give you an update on the Canada Post strike. So don't go anywhere. Forum Daily will be right back after these messages. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump returned to his hometown of New York to be honored as Time Magazine's Person of the Year and to ring the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. It's the latest chapter in the businessman-turned-politician's love-hate relationship with the city where he was born. Today's events were also a measure of Mr. Trump's political comeback, having gone from an ostracized former president who refused to accept his election loss 4 years ago to a president-elect who won decisively in November. And billionaire Elon Musk has called Prime Minister Justin Trudeau insufferable and says that he won't be in power much longer. Mr. Musk's comment on his social media platform was a reaction to the Prime Minister's comments on Kamala Harris's defeat in the U.S. presidential election. Mr. Trudeau was speaking in an organization dedicated to improving gender representation in Canadian politics. Mr. Trudeau compared Ms. Harris's defeat to an attack on women's rights and progress. This morning, Alberta's premier announced the steps the province plans to take to shore up security at the Canada-U.S. border.
Today, Alberta's government is taking immediate action to crack down on illegal activities at our shared Alberta-U.S. border, namely illegal migrants and the trafficking of drugs and guns. This suite of measures will curb illegal border activities and strengthen our nation's border security. We're investing $29 million to create a new unit, the Interdiction Patrol Team, or IPT, under the command of the Alberta Sheriffs. This unit will be supported by over 50 specially trained sheriffs. 4 drug patrol dogs, critical to ensure reasonable suspicion to search vehicles. 10 cold weather surveillance drones that can operate in high winds with dedicated pilots. And 4 narcotics analyzers to test for illicit drugs. The IPT will be made up of 7 teams of sheriffs. We will also create a 2-kilometer deep border zone, which is a red zone deemed critical infrastructure to enable the sheriffs to arrest individuals found attempting to cross the border illegally or attempting to traffic illegal drugs or weapons without needing a warrant.
Premier Smith explained that the new unit is expected to be up and running and hopes that this expansion will help ease tensions between Canada and the U.S., given Donald Trump's grievances about the border. Labour Minister Stephen McKinnon says the government will not interfere in the Canada Post strike. Mr. McKinnon says he is adamant that the government will remain on the sidelines as the strike nears 4 weeks. He says that while Canadians are fed up with the countrywide strike, ultimately it's up to the two parties to get the deal done and get mail moving again.
Canadians are fed up with this dispute. They do not believe that the parties have taken these negotiations seriously. I hear that from small business owners, from rural and remote communities, indeed, Indigenous stakeholders. So it's time for these parties to reflect the great responsibility that they have, get on with these negotiations, get a deal, and return the Postal Service to Canadians.
While the number of Canadians who received medical assistance in dying throughout 2023 was up, federal statistics show that the growth of cases actually slowed down significantly. Health Canada says 15,343 people received help to die last year, representing a 15.8% increase from 2022, but a decrease from years prior. Medically assisted death in Canada is only legal for people on the basis of a physical health condition, but Ottawa is looking into the feasibility of an expansion to include advance requests. Ontario Premier Doug Ford says that his government is introducing a suite of measures to address and dismantle encampments around the province, including steep fines for people who use drugs.
As Minister Klander mentioned, these encampments are taking over public spaces, with illegal drug use happening out in the open, creating huge safety risks for people and communities. Enough is enough. This has to stop, and it will stop. Families deserve to play in and enjoy their parks and playgrounds without fearing for the safety of their kids. A couple of weeks ago, the mayors standing with us today wrote to me. They asked for specific measures to help end the spread of encampments in their communities.
Mr. Ford said that the measures will include fines of up to $10,000 and up to 6 months in prison for people who repeatedly use illegal drugs in parks and public spaces. It is unclear, however, when these measures will take effect. All right, don't go anywhere. Coming up after the break, we'll be discussing the increasing need across Canada for blood and plasma donations. We'll be speaking to the Director of Donor Relations at Canadian Blood Services, Gail Voyer, to learn more about the donation process and how important it is to give blood, especially during the holiday season. After that, we'll talk about iPhone's new feature. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after the break. Over the holidays, many people are in the spirit of giving back. But when people think about donating, there's the misconception that it always needs to be money that's donated. If you're looking for a way to give back, something to consider donating that you don't need to pull your wallet out for is blood. Blood and blood products are a critical part of everyday medical care, including major surgeries, medical procedures, cancer treatments, and managing diseases and disorders. As a blood donor, you form a vital link in Canada's lifeline, helping many Canadians wake up healthy each day. I'm now joined by Gail Voyer, Director of Donor Relations at Canadian Blood Services, to explain the importance of donating. Gail, thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Now, what are the steps to becoming a donor?
You know what? The most important thing is to go to blood.ca or download our Give Blood app. You can look at some of the eligibility requirements and book your appointment or call 1-888-236-6283 and we can answer any questions that you may have prior to donating.
Now, do you mind explaining the process of donating blood when someone becomes a donor?
Of course. So when you arrive at our donor centers, you're welcomed by our clinic services teams. And the key is just making sure that you're hydrated prior to donating, sure that you're feeling well on the day of your donation, and that you've had something to eat about an hour before. You'll also just need to bring government issued ID. And then as you come in, we'll check you into your appointment and walk you through the process step by step. So we do a screening. Obviously, we actually have you donate your blood so that you're sitting at a bed doing that. And then, of course, following up your appointment, you are in refreshments with our lovely volunteers eating snacks and juice and cookies.
Now, when a lot of people think about donating blood, they actually aren't sure what donating plasma is. So, would you mind explaining what plasma is and why it's just as important for people to donate that as well as blood?
Yeah, so the need for blood, I'll just say, is constant, and the need for plasma is growing. And so the difference between donating plasma and blood is that we only take the plasma portion of the blood, and the red and white blood cells are returned to your system. What that looks like is it takes about 90 minutes for your first appointment, can be less once you become a more seasoned donor. The idea behind it is that the plasma is used to make medications like immunoglobulin for patients, whereas some of the whole blood products are used for other types of diseases that we're trying to support.
And what types of medical procedures would a plasma blood donation be used for?
You know what? A lot of autoimmune disorders or immune diseases can be the reason that somebody needs plasma products. For whole blood, for example, it could be because they're going through cancer treatment, maybe they've had a surgery. It really just depends on what the needs of the patients are and where they're at in their medical procedure.
And I'm curious, how many times can someone donate in a year? And is it different for men and women? And what age can you actually start donating?
That's a great question. Thank you for that. So you can start donating at the age of 17. For males donating whole blood, you can donate every 56 days. For females, it's every 84 days. Plasma is slightly different. So males can donate every week and females can donate every couple of weeks, pardon me.
Now, some people think that if you've donated blood once in your lives, that's enough. And of course, any donation is amazing. I'm sure you can attest to. But how important is it to be consistently donating blood?
You know, that's a really great question. It's important because as I mentioned, the need for blood is constant and the need for plasma is growing. So the more that you can give, the more often that you can dedicate to booking an appointment, whether it's for whole blood, plasma donations. I just would ask everybody just to remember that there are patients in need every single day. And with that demand, we don't do this alone. And so we do this with the gracious support of our volunteer donors. And the important piece is that we always need new donors. And one of the things that we're asking for is that we just need a number of new donors in order just to sustain the system, not just over the holidays, but throughout the year, just because the demand is growing.
Now, you've mentioned patients in need, and there are people needing blood pretty much every day, as you've just touched on. So, I want to talk about how important, or sorry, how many lives could potentially be saved with just a single blood donation.
Yeah, it depends on what the products are used for, but up to 3 patients can be saved for every donation. The other thing that's really important to remember is that oftentimes I get to hear stories from patients and their families. And recently, I'll just share a personal story that my husband came home and said one of his colleagues walked into the office that morning and said, thanks to Gail and her team for the work that they do. And the reason for that was because their mom had needed blood over the weekend and it got her to a better place in her health. And so she kind of thanked us for those donations. And so always just remember those patients in need. And that need doesn't go away because every day, every minute of every day, someone in Canada needs blood.
Gail, thank you so much for the time today and happy holidays.
Thank you very much for having me.
With the holiday season in full swing, Health Canada is providing Canadians with some tips to manage the health and safety hazards that some holiday items may pose in your home. Health Canada is reminding Canadians to be vigilant when it comes to the flammable nature of real trees, the importance of checking your lights before putting them up, and always turning off your lights when you go to sleep or leave the house. Health Canada has also produced a list of 10 reasons why toys end up on the naughty list. We were joined earlier by Andrea Marini, Product Safety Officer with Health Canada, to discuss tips for staying safe this holiday season.
When purchasing a real tree, you want to make sure that it's watered. You want to make sure that it's sturdy. It's not going to fall and pose as a tripping hazard or fall hazard, and that it's away from fireplaces, radiators, any sources of heat where it can catch fire. When you're purchasing lights, you want to make sure that the lights are certified. Also, if you're taking those lights out from the storage or from the basement, take a look at them. Are the wires frayed? Is there burnt light bulbs? Are there broken light bulbs? You want to avoid using those. And then when we talk about electrical cords or extension cords, avoid crisscrossing them through doorways or open spaces where somebody can trip over them. And also avoid running them underneath the rug. This can cause them to be worn, damaged, or overheating, posing as a fire risk as well. And another great tip is when we talk about ornaments, put the breakable ornaments or ornaments with small parts that a child could choke on. Put them up high, out of reach of both pets and children. And lastly and finally, when you're ready to light that tree, just make sure that those outlets are not overloaded. That can also pose as a fire risk. Definitely battery operated can reduce the risk of injury in comparison to live candles. But again, if you have lit a candle, make sure it's secure, far away from little ones to reach it, away from curtains or anything that's flammable, and do not leave the candles unattended. And same goes for lights on the mantle, on the tree, any decorations. You also want to shut those off when you go to bed or when you leave the house. That's another great tip. New gifts and toys are a holiday highlight for sure, but with a few tips to keep in mind, we can reduce the risk of injury this holiday season. So firstly, purchase age-appropriate toys. Toys for older children may have small parts or other hazards that might be unsafe for younger children. And look out for batteries. Avoid children handling batteries. It's best for adults to handle the batteries, and ensure that they're actually enclosed in those battery compartments. Also, Take a look at not just toys, but household items that have button batteries. These are those flat disc, small shaped batteries. You can find them in greeting cards, you can find them in watches, hearing aids, light up toys, the light up jewelry. They're really common, but they can cause severe internal chemical burns. If you suspect that a child has swallowed a button battery, seek medical attention immediately. And en route to the hospital, you can give them honey, which would reduce the risk of injury. But we can certainly take precautions this holiday season. And in the event something does happen, you can report an incident to Health Canada. Holiday safety tips can be found if you visit our website at canada.ca. We also have holiday tips as well as 10 reasons toys end up on Health Canada's naughty list.
Christmas is coming early for Canadians as Apple's suite of artificial intelligence-based tools has arrived in Canada. Apple Intelligence can help readers proofread emails, change their tone, and make lists of key points to summarize the message. It also lets users create custom emojis and images along with videos based on images stored in your phone. It's available to iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max users, as well as those who have any of the iPhone 16 generation of phones. I'm Teresa Skubik, and that'll do it for your look at national and international news for today. Remember, for more news on demand, you can always visit our website at thenewsforum.ca and make sure to follow us on social media. You can watch all of our commentary programming on the Newsforum YouTube channel. Good night, Canada.